Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. And today I have a special guest. His name is Ryan Stanley. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Awesome, Cesar. Thank you very much for asking. Great to be here.
Great. I'm glad to have you here. Before we dive in, I want to give our listeners a little bit about your background so they can kind of get to know you, and then we'll dive in. So Ryan is a lifelong entrepreneur who is known for his impressively natural ability to connect with and understand and empower those who are in pursuit of and willing to make significant changes in their personal and professional lives so they can end up being the best version of themselves. Since graduating from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, iPEC, in 2009 as a certified professional coach, Ryan has changed the lives of hundreds of clients from all walks of life. More recently, Ryan has also been working at his alma mater as both an admissions coach, where he closed almost $22 million in sales in 8 years, and has their first ever internal coach, where he coached staff from entry level to C-suite on everything from daily professional growth to how they want to show up energetically in other more personal areas of their lives. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And definitely I want to tap into that and learn more about that in that journey for sure. Cool. And so before we get going with that, though, I want to understand from you, like, what were you born and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, I was born in Maryland, but I only lived there till I was about 2, so I don't have any particular. I might have one, memory.
Yeah.
In general. Spent most of my life in New Jersey. That's where I live now. I lived kind of out in the country of New Jersey. I spent some time in South Carolina. I went to high school there for a year. I went to college there for a year. But a majority of my life was really spent here in like the northwestern area of New Jersey.
Got it. And has there, as you were growing up and kind of going through that journey, were there any specific things that you felt like there were lessons to be learned, then now that you reflect back and see that?
Sure. That's a great question. I don't know that I can say specifically about having to be New Jersey itself as much as, I think at any point life can be full of lessons. I think once we recognize that every experience is an opportunity to be a lesson one way or another, that in itself can be the biggest lesson of all.
Yeah.
Right? Things don't necessarily happen to us. They happen for us. And when we start to step into that mindset and recognize that, every opportunity, every moment is an opportunity for us to decide who we want to be and what we want to do about it, can certainly make a difference in our lives.
Yeah. And, I like what you mentioned. Life doesn't necessarily happen to us. It happens for us. And I want to elaborate a little bit more on that and get your input on that, because I think that's a big differentiator, right? A lot of people or many people fall into the to us category, like things are happening to us and, become a victim versus the category of for us, where now you become more empowered on that. So let's talk about that a little bit and tell me how do you see that from your perspective? Because again, I feel like many people do fall into that category, right?
Of course. And I certainly have many times in my life as well, right? So it's a human nature. It makes sense. We were kind of raised in this space where we see our environment, we feel our environment, and we are kind of naturally as humans start reacting to the experience, to life, to what is happening. And so we feel like it's happening to us one way or another.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, when we start to recognize or even consider the thought that maybe it was happening for us, that's when we start to access the right side of our brain and we start to become more creative. and we start to be able to influence our thoughts and influence our actions, and then life literally responds. Sometimes it doesn't always feel that way, and it is kind of more of a longer game to look at, but even from a quantum physics level, like when we have actual thoughts, like actual, there's different brain waves, right? Alpha, beta, gamma, different types of waves that come out of it. And so that actually has an effect on our life. It has an effect energy wise. And so even on the worst things, right? And we certainly, different people have lived all sorts of different lives, but at any given point, if we can take one of our worst things that's ever happened to us, we can say it that way if we feel like that, and we were to look at it and say, well, if this were to happen for me, if in some weird, crazy universe, I could step outside myself and step outside the feeling that I have about the experience and ask myself, if this did happen for me, or if I wanted this in some crazy way to happen for me, why would that be? What could the possible best results or best outcome for all be? And when we start to get curious in that space and ask ourselves questions like that without saying, well, but it hurts, or, well, this happens and this is painful. Absolutely. And by no means am I taking away from any pain that anybody feels, right? I'm just saying, if there's an opportunity to ask, well, what if this did happen for me? What would that reason be? And when you actually ask that question out loud, you immediately open up possibilities. Well, it might be so that I can help others who this has happened to as well. It might be this happened to me so that I have a better way to understand how I'm supposed to be a father or a spouse or a brother or a business owner or any of these different things. If we recognize that anything can be a lesson if we wanted to, and we step into it and decide, okay, I'm going to take that lesson and utilize it to be the best version of myself and serve others at the same time, you can really create a win-win out of any scenario. And if you combine patience with that, so you don't feel like, hey, I have to have all the answers today and I have to have the solution today, but I recognize that this happened for me, so I'm going to now step into it and decide what I want to do with it and be patient for the outcome. It's really when the win-win occurs.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. It's definitely a big difference when you're thinking about things happening to us, because automatically you have kind of like this guard that comes up, and then you kind of close yourself of any opportunity, right? Whereas when we're looking at the for us, you're looking at, as you mentioned, you start thinking about it and tapping into a different part of the brain where your curiosity and the ability of trying to understand why it happened and what comes out of that. So a lot of times, from chaos, there's opportunity, right? In many different aspects. Jim Rohn talks about follow night comes day, right? And so from a dark place comes light. And so thinking about it from that perspective, and that's one thing that through this podcast is being able to give people the ideas or the tips or empowerment to say, hey, we all go through different and difficult times. It's not easy, being alive, period, right? And we got to be able to figure out how we can step out of that through hearing people like you share some ideas and thoughts and tips to get you out of that mode and to step into your true potential, what I consider to be,
Totally. I love that. Yeah. And because when you're in a space where it's happened to me, you've judged it as good or bad or something. And again, which makes sense, right? Based on everybody's life. So it's not that I'm not judging you for judging. But I am saying, like, what if you weren't to judge that, and if you were to be more curious about it instead? Because when you judge something, you put a label on it and you stop it, and that's it. There's no room for growth. There's no room for shift. It just is what it is, and that's it. But if you say, why did this happen for me? It doesn't feel like it happened for me, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't wish it upon somebody in a bad situation. But if I can be curious about it instead of judge it just as this terrible thing and say, well, what is the opportunity here? How could it have happened for me? And you start to take action on that question. That's when your life can open up to possibility.
Yeah. And the other thing I like that you mentioned is we got to become our best versions of ourselves, right? And that's something that I think constantly we have to be able to do, especially when we're trying to grow anything in our lives or, grow a business or strengthen a relationship or any of that aspect. Is we always got to look at how can I become that best version of myself? How can I improve yesterday's person of my personality from yesterday to now? And it could be a very minor change, right? What is your point on that? Because a lot of people sometimes feel like, well, they're looking for that big win, that big change, that big, change of anything, right? And they don't consider the small changes or even the minor things that really becomes that better person, version of yourself.
Totally. So it's a combination of things, and it's such a great point. So it is a combination of daily reminding, right? So first of all, so we'll go back to the judgment piece quickly. First of all, you're if that's what you want to do, if someone wants to become the best versions of themselves in this form, at this point of conversation, I would say first thing you do is, going back to judgment, don't judge who you are now, right? So don't say, well, it's not about me being bad now. It's not that I'm not good enough now. It's that I'm exactly who I should be based on every single second of life that I've lived up until this moment. And I know that I have true potential to be even more. And I know that there is opportunity for me to become more, right? So that's the first step. The first step is not judging yourself for where you are, but observing and being aware what you like about where you are. What would you like to change about where you are? But to sit and spend time and waste physical energy from your mind focusing on what's not good, or what you should have done previously, or where you should be compared to somebody else, like you're not part of their journey. Their journey is completely different from yours. Focus on who you are now and who you prefer to be. So that's A. And then B, I mean, it's really about, what does the best version of yourself look like? What does it feel like? What actually is that? So when you and I say it, and Cesar, obviously, even just seeing the work that you're doing, I can see it's something that you probably focus on regularly. But not everybody does. And they feel like, oh, well, if I think about it, I might think about it one day, and then maybe it'll happen the next, or maybe it'll happen within the year or whatever. But from my experience, and I'm certainly open to being challenged on this in any way, but from my experience, it's about deciding what that is every single day. It's about literally making time to write out, what is the best version of myself look like? If I could be exactly who I wanted to be, what does my life look like? It's about writing that out, writing it out in the present tense as if it already occurs, and then reading it aloud every single day, and reminding your subconscious as you start your day and you end your day with who you want to be and what you want your life to look like. And then when you start to do that and you do remind your subconscious, you start to take different actions. And that's also, it's not you just automatically take actions, but you obviously want to choose to take actions as well. But I think by reminding yourself of this, when you have other conversations where opportunities are available, you'll be more aware of them as opposed to where you would have been had you just been spending time and thinking about why you're not good enough.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And I definitely can back that up. I love that though. And it comes down to a lot of times, like the way the unconscious mind works is, when you tie in like the affirmations or certain rituals or habits or things to that extent, that repetition and then putting things into the present tense, right? So that you can start tricking the mind of, you already have this, you want more of that, and then you start checking that positive energy. And so I love that exercise for sure. Is definitely something that people should try to do and definitely get into their daily habits, if anything.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, and they could try to do, right? We never want to say should. Anybody, once we start saying we should, we're judging them. I mean, if somebody wants, but if that's what they want, this would be a great tip. I think something else I would add to that is, who's your tribe? Who are you surrounding yourself with? They say, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so sometimes could be a painful thing, right? So you don't want to say, hey, I don't love my family. I don't love my friends. And if they are people whose habits, whose behaviors, whose attitudes, whose words, whose actions are not serving your purpose and serving the best version of yourself, it's not that you have to completely cut them off and you have to be this angry person who never is connected with their whomever before. But there is an opportunity for you to spend more time with people who do empower you and who do live more the life that you want to live, and to learn from their habits, or to have open-ended conversations that serve your mind more, to put you in that direction. Sometimes as we grow, and sometimes when that happens, and people do grow and make changes in that space, they're fearful of being, well, I don't want these people not to like me, and I want my old friends not to like me anymore. And in the grand scheme of things, that's, again, fear of being judged. And when we really truly step into our greatness and decide who we want to be and what the best version of ourselves is, we will start to attract people into our life that will serve that journey. And then simultaneously, those, if it's done with love, right? It's not like, screw you, I don't want to be, your friend anymore, as much as, hey, I love you, and I'm working on this right now. I love you, and when I'm with you, I'm going to be present with you and truly be authentic with you. And 99% of my time, I'm going to be spending it with other people who are serving my purpose and building my business or inspiring me to be the best version of myself. So you have to say all that. And maybe if you did, that would be an opportunity for them to say, I wonder how I could improve myself, right? So if it's done with love and intention for the greatest good of all, it's really nothing to worry about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Ryan, let me ask you something. Even stepping back a little bit, through your own journey, right, and becoming the entrepreneur, like, what were some of the downfalls that you went through or some of the obstacles that you have to overcome to kind of get you to the place that you are now?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the things that you see and you hear all the time, whether it be from athletes, whether it be from entrepreneurs, whether it be from, famous musicians or whatever, it's consistency, it's patience, it's persistence, it's determination, it's choosing to, recognize fear for what it is and recognize that most times fear is a liar, especially when it comes just strictly from within. I think a lot of the time when you say what are the downfalls, I think for anybody can just be listening to the inner critic too much and deciding that, you're not good enough in any capacity, as opposed to waking up on purpose and deciding who you want to be. The other thing is really I think one of the biggest things that any entrepreneur can do is patience, and is understanding that not only is it a long game, it's an eternal game. I think that was Simon Sinek who I saw a conversation about that. Gary Vee, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he talks a lot about the long game, right? So it's about being patient with yourself, and it's about stepping into whatever project you're working with intention, purpose, follow through, and also kind of being unattached to the outcome. It's like this weird line, by the way, Cesar, which I certainly go back and forth as well, right? So this is still, I'm trying to figure out myself. It's this thin line between being attached to the outcome, because you want to be intentional about your efforts and what you're creating and who you are, and you want to envision the best version of whatever project that you're working on. And at the same time, there comes a point, and it's going to be different for everybody in every business, where it no longer serves you to be moving forward on this project in some capacity. Most very successful entrepreneurs have either gone bankrupt or just had, 5 or 6 companies, right? So each one of those, they're learning lessons, they're learning more about themselves. And when you understand that, hey, I don't want to be, there are people that say, well, I don't want to be viewed as the guy that just keeps starting companies that don't go anywhere. It's like, oh, so that's one way to look at it. Or you could be looked at as the guy that did not give up and kept creating and creating and creating until he found the thing that really changed the world.
Right.
So patience, persistence, and understanding of the long game, I think is probably something that I would put in that space.
And I think that, more so now, I don't know if it's because we have, more access, more information. I feel like sometimes people, because we have more of that, they feel that I can fast track much faster the process. And sometimes they tend to forget the aspect of being patient, persistent, being committed, right? And so, one thing that I want to hear from your perspective, and I don't know if you had any of your clients or anybody come to you that might say, I've been on this for whatever period of time, way too long, whatever that might be for them. Way too long for every person is different, right? For one person might be 1 month, for one person might be 5 years. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, their perception is that they've been on it for way too long and they haven't seen the results that they were expecting. And they're kind of ready to throw in the towel. Like, how do you approach that? Or what are some of the things that you can tell, the people that are ready to do that? Because at the end of the day, I see like, all that journey, everything you've done, you might be literally 1 feet away to doing it. Yeah, you're ready to give up, right? And so, what is your feedback on that?
And it's a great point and question, Cesar, because in fact, Napoleon Hill talks a lot about it. Being 10 feet from gold. He tells a story about a guy who, I'll tell the shortest version possible, but he, goes to, he finds a place that he thinks is going to be a great place to dig for gold, like literally physically. And so he doesn't have any money, but he goes back to his hometown and he gets some investors, and they say, listen, I need to invest in this, digging this mining material. So they give him money. He goes there, he digs. He thought it was going to be perfect. And then finally just one day quits, and he goes back home and he has no money and he has to figure out ways to pay his investors. And then somebody else comes back and says, who bought the property from him and kind of bought in an assessor of land. And it turns out the guy was like literally just a foot off.
Yeah.
And so he took this information, some knowledge about the landscape, and then found like one of the biggest gold mines in history or something like that, right? So this is the abbreviated Ryan Stanley version. So check out Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
It's a really good book. Yeah.
So sometimes, to kind of answer the question, use that as an example, sometimes it's just about getting some expertise, get a mentor, get a coach, find somebody who can help you look at it from a different perspective, right? So it's not just about, let me just make this decision. I've been doing it for a month. I've been doing it for 5 years. Now it's not going to work. And by the way, sometimes that's the case, right? Sometimes you do need to move on but having a mentor, having a coach, having some sort of an analysis instead of just your feelings of not being worthy or being tired as the meter, take a look. What are the options? What does the market look like, depending on what you want to do? So assess it, and then make the best decision for you. I think in most cases, a month is probably not enough time to really do anything. Even as an example, when I work with coaching clients, I have them work with me for a minimum of 3 months, because I believe it takes at least that long to kind of see a major difference in your life and the direction that you want to go. So I would say in most often, if the other piece to it is, what's your intuition tell you? What does your gut tell you? What does your heart tell you? What a lot of people don't always think about is, we've kind of been in modern day science trained to believe that the heart is just a muscle and the stomach is just an organ. But there's actually neurons in there. Just there are neurons in your brain. And so when people say, trust your gut, or I can feel like love in my heart, like there's a thinking process of some capacity scientifically that is happening. And so when you start to tap into that a little bit and understand it, I mean, if you feel like I'm almost there, then keep going and support, and look for some support, and look for some mentorship, and look for some guidance. But also in that case, it's always important from my experience to go to people who, if somebody has something that you want in life, or behaves the way that you would like to behave, or lives a life that you would want to live, they're a better person to get advice from or guidance from than from somebody who doesn't have anything that you want and is not living the type of person that you want. Sometimes people go to a relative or a friend who literally doesn't have anything they want, and that person like, don't do that. Oh, it's a waste of your time. I tried that once and it was terrible. And, but then you're like, okay, well, I don't really want what you have. And so while intentions seem the best and they're probably for, my best outcome, it's not necessarily, you don't really have what I want. And so it's not that I don't love you as much as it just doesn't make sense for me to follow your guidance.
Right. Yeah. And, to add to that, I think we'll go back to what you mentioned earlier today. The average 5 really count. I like that. That's very critical here, because you're definitely looking for that group of people that can edify you, that can, even just throw in some ideas. And I always say that when we look at the average 5, it should be composed of more or less 3 different kinds of people, in my opinion. Number one is, people that are playing at a higher level, which in this case could be a mentor, someone that you can go up to, and they're willing to help you out. They're going to be that mentor that you need. The other part of that will be people that are kind of on the same playing field as you. They're seeking and looking to get the same outcome as you do, yet they're willing to also edify you and help you and create joint ventures. And that you can find a lot of that with joint ventures, right? So that's those same people. And then I always believe of giving back. There's going to be someone behind or below you that hasn't been able to reach those levels yet. They have the drive. They have the ambition, positive ambition of becoming that. And so reach down and help them. And I think that when you take those 3 different people into your network of your average 5, then you're moving along with that, with that too, right? And so I think that's critical when it comes down to, getting ready to give up. Like, look at all of everything you've done and look at what you have accomplished and what is still to be accomplished from that perspective.
Yeah, I love that a lot, man. And the other piece to that is, the only thing that I would add, and by the way, again, just want to reiterate, I really love that, is that while you are receiving from the mentor and you are receiving and being edified from the in your example, like the person who's at your same level, and you're giving advice and guiding the person who's coming up, you can also give love and edify to others, to all the above. And sometimes by doing that, you create an elevated emotion in general, which helps you to be more of who you want to be. And sets an example and lets them know how you like to be spoken to and spoken with. And so certainly receive with gratitude any information, guidance, mentorship that you can get. But also at any given point, recognize that we're all humans and everybody loves to hear, especially if it's true, right? I'm not talking about blowing smoke. But if you see something true that is helpful from a mentor, from a peer, from anyone, and again, maybe somebody who's up and coming as well, share that with them and give them the love and edification that serves them as well. And it will serve simultaneously.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Love that. Let's talk about this. In July 2019, you published your first book titled Be Patient, Be Present, Be Joyful, a first aid kit for the emotional bumps, scrapes, and bruises of life. So let's talk about your book. And tell me what inspired that, and what are some of the messages that you're outlining in your book, and what you're trying to accomplish with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. So, obviously I love personal development. I love self-help. If I'm being honest with myself, I'm not a great reader. Actually, if I could reframe that, I don't enjoy reading, books that are hundreds of pages long.
Yeah.
I typically have had so many books that I get 3/4 of the way through, and or while I'm reading, I have to go back to the other page. That's just the way my brain has worked. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to change that, but up until recently, that's just been my experience for how my brain and body works. So, and what I found is many of those books, and this is very helpful, and this is how it gets done, but what they do is they spend 100 pages telling you what they're going to tell you. They spend 100 pages telling you, and then they spend another 100 pages telling you what they just told you. And so, 300 pages for me to kind of get through this message sometimes didn't always serve me, especially if I'm just having a tough day.
Yeah.
Right? I'm having a moment where whatever, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxiety. And so I wanted a book to where I could just pick it up and get some pretty simple concepts within. If I wanted to read it straight through, I can get it done in a half hour. But in any other case, I could just open it up and find something that would serve me in the moment and give me some opportunity to think about who I'd prefer to be. And so, and that's not to say that there aren't those out there, but I felt that I also, having experience as a coach and working with different types of people, had a message that it was serving me in that way and that I could put into an easy book. And so this book is intentionally short. There's 3 chapters. There's a prologue, 3 chapters, and an epilogue. The 3 chapters are Be Patient, Be Present, Be Joyful, hence the name of the book. And it was really made with two purposes in mind, similar to what I just described. The first one is that you can read straight through it. And again, you could probably read it in about a half hour. And it does give you some very specific, concrete steps that you can take in any given situation to relieve stress, to relieve anxiety, to become more aware of who you are in the moment and who you prefer to be, and to take action on it. It dives in a little bit of the philosophy of us being a creator. In any given moment, you can create who you are. We are creating right now. You and I are creating 2 people recording a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And aspects of that. If you decide to dress all in blue, you've created a person dressed in blue. As silly and obvious as it sounds, but it's really the truth, right?
Right.
We create conversation, we create art, we create song, and sometimes, but by being happy, we create a happiness, and we create a happy person. By being grateful, we create gratitude, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, right, we create anxiety through being an anxious person. And we create sadness by being sad, and we create anger by being angry. And so it's not that they shouldn't be there, and we just, don't worry, be happy. But the awareness that we are physically creating that is something that we can now take into consideration. And then that's kind of how the book starts, and goes into quick chapters around how you can create patience, you can create joy, you can create presence, and that type of thing. It gives you some steps on it. So then as a book, you can then walk away and utilize that information later in life. The other piece to it is it was literally intentionally created where every single page has either a quote or a highlight or just something that you could just, hey, I'm having a tough day. Let me just let the universe decide. Let me just open to a random page and find something. And it is set up to where it is a first aid kit. If you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling anxiety, to pick it up and find something. In fact, I have a copy right here. So you can see how small it is.
Oh, yeah.
Designed as a first aid kit.
Yep.
So you open it up and just find something quick and easy. And so I was inspired just to be able to give that message to anybody who needed it at any given time. And I always say this, and it's absolutely true. I literally wrote it as much for myself as I did for the rest of the world.
Yeah. That's lovely. And again, it comes down to what you just mentioned. You wrote it for you as much as you did for the world. And when you come from that place, you definitely can take those personal experiences and be able to relate to that. And I always say, not everybody's going to relate to what's in a book, right? Yet I always say, if you can find one paragraph, one sentence, one word, one phrase that's going to resonate with you and change your outcome in somehow, or just impact it positively, totally. I feel you've done your part and your service at that point.
And by the way, once you do that, you then have the opportunity to impact someone else who then can be changed, and their trajectory of their life can be changed, and then they can have an influence. I mean, it really, genuinely can have a global impact on just being, the best version of yourself. Really, especially in recent times, right? I mean, it's a really unique time. The thing that I really just keep going back to, and I think if literally everybody focused on it, I think, going with Gandhi of be the light that you want to see in the world. Yeah. And if everybody focused on that, more people that light can be contagious, and they can grow, and we can change as a planet.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree with that. Let's talk about your coaching for a second. What are some, so do you work with one-on-one clients, or you do this more on a group setting? What is that like? And what are some of the things that you cover with your clients?
Yeah, I've done all of the above. The start of my career, I worked a lot with musicians and people in the music industry, based on my prior background in artist management. That has since probably in the past couple of years changed. I certainly still do. People via word of mouth and just from referrals from people who worked with me in the past, find me who are musicians and artists. And so the reason I brought that up is, so sometimes I'd work with bands, and so that is multiple people. There's a group setting, right? And so we would sit and connect. But I've worked with doctors, I work with CEOs, I work with just young people, authors, people who are just looking for more patience, presence. Again, have an understanding that there is a better version of themselves, maybe hidden from their life, that their life experience has kind of, actually, so here's a great example. I was working with a client recently, and she told me that over the weekend, she had gone out and was pruning some trees. And she was a younger person, and she just bought her first house, and she was pruning for the first time in her life. She actually told me, she's like, I think it's called pruning. I was out there and I was pruning the dead leaves off the tree, and so that it could grow more. And she said, Ryan, what I realized is, and we've been working together about 3 months, and she said, that is what I've been doing with you. Like, I've been getting rid of some of these things that were there, that were grew. It was necessary for them to be part of my life, for me to get where I am now. But they're no longer serving me, but they're actually holding me back from being the best version of myself. And a lot of those times, those can be blocks, they can be fears, they can be limiting beliefs, things that keep us small. So I would say a majority of my coaching is one-on-one. A majority, in fact, right now, all of my coaching is done virtually. So I work with people all over the world. I also have recently started another company called Teach Me to Sell. I co-founded it. And I just bring this up briefly because I coach people around sales. And so we specifically, I have a partner, and we specifically work with service-oriented solopreneurs. So coaches, consultants, direct sales, like if people want to sell essential oils, or they're getting some sort of a thing where they want to help the world. That's why they got in. They didn't get into to sell things, but they got into it to serve, to be the like they wanted to see in the world. And then all of a sudden they realize they have to ask people money to do that. And they get uncomfortable and they feel nervous and they don't know how to do it. And they give up on their dream. And so we wanted to start a company that serves people so they can serve more people. Serves people who want to serve so they can serve more people.
Right.
But so I bring that up. So now I do that as well. So I'm in the partnership. My partner is a guy named Kirk Van Linden. He's got years of literal sales training experience for a Fortune 500 company. He was sought after all over the country. So he's also a coach and obviously a solution-focused individual. But his superpower is the sales training, and my superpower is the mindset and the coaching. And so I coach people around in that space and who they want to be as well. So that's also.
What are some of the techniques, maybe one or two that you want to share, that you can share with us in terms of how you approach maybe a limiting belief or something to that extent when you're helping your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, again, going back to the start of the conversation, it becomes around curiosity, right? So as limiting belief, as an example, it's like, well, you can, at any point, first of all, ask yourself, am I judging myself, right? Have I used the word should? I should be doing that. I should be doing this. I should have lost more weight. I should exercise more. I should get off social media. Like, those may all be good things that you want to do. But the energy around I should, so again, puts a label on it and kind of keeps it as, hey, I'm not good enough right now. As opposed to as simple, and that's really the most simple tip I can give, change to could, right? So you go from judgment to curiosity. I could exercise more. I could lose some weight. I could get off social media, whatever these different things are that you find are hindering you. And working with a coach, you can uncover some of those things. But even just the energy in that, I mean, I'm sure you can feel it right now, right? It's like, I should lose weight. I could lose some weight. Yeah. Cool. So what does that look like? So then by leaving it that space, it opens you up to the opportunity to find out what is the next step in that. So when it comes to a limiting belief, first of all, asking yourself, how true is that, is a really important question. Second question is, how is that thought serving my purpose? Now, it goes deeper. You have to figure out what your purpose is. And sometimes you're like, well, Ryan, I mean, that's a really big question. Sometimes it's my purpose for this minute.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the purpose for today. Sometimes it's my purpose as a parent. Sometimes it's a purpose as a colleague. Sometimes, so when people feel like this, you can ask this question. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, what do I want to do for the rest of my life and every single second of it? But it can be, who do I want to be today? And is this thought serving that purpose? Is this behavior serving that purpose? And if it's not, okay, I don't need to judge myself for having it. It makes sense that I had it based on every single second of life that I lived up until this moment. But now that I recognize through my own curiosity and accessing the right side of my brain that this isn't serving me, what thought would serve my purpose? What action would be more moving towards the direction that I want to be and who I want to be? And again, going back to, had you created a blueprint and a North Star document of who I want to be and read it aloud every day and focused on it, you have an easy answer to go to, because you can say at any point, is this thought, is this action, is this relationship, is this friendship, is this behavior, is this job serving my purpose and who I want to be? And if it's not, then you have the opportunity to take an action to do something different.
Yeah, no, that definitely. And even with that, looking at judgment and we're so easy at self-sabotaging ourselves with a lot of the different things that are going on, right? And so we got to be able to step away from that and look at it from a different angle, right? So that, we can see the opportunities, or we can look at how we can actually improve upon that. And when we start just self-sabotaging, you can literally drown yourself into a little bubble, and just nothing comes out of that, right?
Totally. And it's like a spiral, right? A spiral. The more you think about something bad, the more you think about the worst, and then you're constantly preparing yourself for the worst case scenario.
Right.
And the way to reverse that is kind of create the reverse spiral of, okay, so think about who I want to be. What have I done? And by the way, celebrate wins, celebrate actions, celebrate the good relationships in your life. Create gratitude intentionally. Like, make time to create gratitude. It's not just like, oh, I guess I should create some gratitude. I'm glad that I'm alive today, which is nice that you want to do that as well. But say, I'm going to spend 10 minutes every morning writing down 5 things that I'm grateful for, and every night before I go to bed. These tiny little tips that then our brain, like, literally physically creates chemicals when you're stressed. It creates chemicals that respond to stress and react to stress, and to help you survive. And that, started in the old days of cavemen, as an example, right? They're afraid of the saber-toothed tiger that's out there. And so they have to, like, be prepared for the worst case scenario. Well, the saber-toothed tiger isn't out there anymore, right? A lot of the time it's just in our head and we're just imagining it. And so we spend so much time thinking about the worst case scenario. If you would take that same exact time to think about the best case scenario and what you can actually do to bring that best case scenario about, from my experience, more often than not, you will bring it about, or at least some clarity on what the path to bring it about might be.
Right. No, definitely. I like one thing that you mentioned here, and you said every single moment in life is an opportunity for us to decide who we want to be and do something about it. When we come from a place of curiosity instead of judgment of ourselves or others, we open up more opportunity for connecting and flow in our lives, which is exactly what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And so can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? I know we've been talking a lot about that. I think, though, the message is very nice and clear, and it really makes sense. Like, we have that opportunity to just decide, right? And so if we focus on decide, or the decision, or the choice that we take every single second, whether I choose to get up on time or not, whether I choose to do this or not, whatever the case may be, right? That choice, that decision can really impact that next second in our lives, right? And so how do we, as people, can utilize that tool much better?
Yeah. And like anything else, it is a muscle, right? It is practice. It does take consistency. And that's why, when we talked about it earlier, first thing to do is get clarity around who do I want to be. And I don't want to sit there and I don't want to hit it over the head with a hammer 100 times, but that if you don't know where you're going, you can't remind yourself of where you're going, right? So really the most important thing is to get some clarity and to make time about what you want that to be. And then literally every single moment, I can say, as a parent, sometimes I get triggered when I've told my 6-year-old to do something 18 times and he still hasn't done it, right? It's easy for me to get stressed or angry if I see them fighting and I want to kind of jump in there with some aggressive energy. That's an opportunity for me to say, am I living the example that I want to, right? Am I being who I want my children to be? And so every single moment is an opportunity for me to decide who I want to be. In fact, right now, I don't know if you can hear them. They're right outside my window. Yeah. The opportunity for me is to not be frustrated that while I'm on an interview, they're out screaming out the window.
Yeah.
So 2 seconds, I'll just close it. So that was an easy go-to.
Yeah.
So, but literally, it's those little tiny things. It's these little, are we reacting to life or are we responding to life?
Right.
And so when we get triggered, when we get stressed, we get angry. It's not that you shouldn't get angry or you shouldn't be stressed or you shouldn't be overwhelmed. Like, it makes perfect sense that you are. And in some capacity, it's all coming from within your head, right? I mean, unless they're in the physical moment of pain and something absolutely clearly, and there is trauma and there are things that, certainly depending on the level of what's occurred in your life, there's opportunity to seek help and therapy and different things. And by no means am I just saying, don't worry, be happy. I am saying that there's something, if you spend every single day thinking about the bad thing that happened to you, that's where you're going to stay. And so any given moment you can decide, okay, what am I going to do today to shift the direction that I'm headed? And so literally every single second, if you find yourself physically uncomfortable, stressed, upset, sad, angry, overwhelmed, that's your body physically telling you that there's a thought that is not necessarily good or warm or serving you, or doesn't align with who you are or what your values are. And so when you physically have these feelings, you have an opportunity to decide, who do I want to be right now? To kind of go back to answering your question. So if every single second is an opportunity for us to decide who we want to be, is this who I want to be? And people say, well, no, but this just happened. Totally get it. Not asking about what just happened, though. I'm just asking if this is who you want to be. Well, no, but 10 years ago, this happened to me. Got it. Totally get that. And you should, it makes sense you're upset about it. And again, my question is this who you want to be? Well, no, it's not. Great. So what do you want to do right in this moment? And I'll be the first to tell you, Cesar, like I try this on myself, right, all the time. So by no means am I saying that first of all, I do often now with practice and intention. It is easier for me to shift from anger or stress or overwhelm. But that's come with practice and intention. And certainly I'll be having a bad day. I'll be having a stressful moment. There are things that happen in life that are stressing. And I can sit in that stress for a little bit, but also recognize it. And I can say, even by asking myself, is this who I want to be? The answer might be yeah. Maybe for about 10 or 15 minutes, I want to be angry and I want to be stressed and I want to ride this out. But know that. And then after the 10 or 15 minutes, ask yourself again, is this still who I want to be? Probably not in most cases, right? In the everyday life. Yeah. And if you're having an argument with a spouse or an argument with a partner or something like that, and you might have said things that you mean but didn't want to say, or anything that come across in a reaction to the moment, there's always an opportunity 10 minutes later to go back and say, hey, I don't have to be angry for the rest of the day, like to yourself. Like, so just because that happened and I felt that way and he or she felt that way, doesn't mean that's who I have to be for the rest of today. So it's been 10 minutes. Who do I want to be now? Right. And then with that, go and connect with that person. And and say the same thing. Listen, I said this and this is how I felt about it. I appreciate you for these reasons that you are. There's a reason that you're in my life. Here's who I'd like to be now. How does that feel for you? Right. And so there's an opportunity to communicate as well. Yeah. And all of that is deciding who you want to be as well. Do I want to be in a relationship where I'm fighting all the time? No, I want to be in a relationship where I'm loving and giving and sharing. Yeah, no, definitely. And my mentor mentioned to me a while back, and I think is very aligned to what you're talking about too, is like, you have to deal with what emerges, right? And a lot of times we tend to forget about that. And so just deal with what emerges. And rather than being mad at the game or rather than being upset about it, like deal with that. However you're going to deal with it, just deal with it, right? A lot of times we either try to create this barrier where we don't even want to deal with that uncomfortable conversation. We don't want to deal with screaming kids. We don't want to deal with whatever the case may be. And we just tend to walk away, yet that creates a negative connotation in your own personal life. So just deal with that and just kind of move through it, right? One thing that I also say is that, life is full of adventures and secrets. Sometimes things that we don't expect, at the end of the day, we don't even understand them and we don't know how to react to those cases, right? Except what we got to be able to do is, at the end of the day, it may not be clear or shiny. We don't understand it. And the circumstances, though, is going to be based on what actions we take. Right. And the result of that is going to be how we do it. So I always say, don't let those circumstances or that current mood take away the best opportunity for you of becoming that best person. Right. Yeah. And so those are things that, again, even being part of this for me in this journey, as you mentioned, is being able to understand when you have to switch or change your emotions from whether it's happy to anger to whatever the case may be, and be able to get back to that place is going to give you more for yourself. It takes practice, yet it's something that I believe we as people need to do more so, especially in difficult or not easy times. Absolutely. And again, it's about intention. So, and to your point, it's absolutely a muscle to build and practice to keep. And with that, again, I go back to gratitude. At any point, if you're literally and genuinely feeling gratitude for anything, it is impossible to be stressed. As silly as that sounds, if you really think about it, in any given, it might only be for a second, like if you're having a stressful situation, but if you genuinely and authentically create gratitude for something in that moment, your body and your brain goes to a different mode, a different energy, different physical energy than one who's stressed or overwhelmed. So if we start to build up a practice of creating gratitude or spending time in the shower, like when you're doing nothing else, think about things that you're grateful for. Your body will start to react and build that as a habit. I've built a habit of literally waking up in the morning and thinking about things that I'm grateful for. It's like literally from like realizing that I'm awake and saying, okay, I'm grateful for my bed. I'm grateful for my pillow. I'm grateful for my blanket. And then I kind of go outside and I'm grateful for my room and I'm grateful for my home. And then I think about outside and I'm grateful for my car and I'm grateful, so I'm kind of becoming conscious and I'm realizing all that is around me that I have to start my day with. And not everybody has all those things, right? And so there's everybody's on their different journey and have different things to be grateful for, but there's always something somewhere. And now from my brain, literally just sometimes I'm not even awake yet. And as I'm starting to wake up, I'm waking up with gratitude. It's not even intentional. It's just part of a habit that I built. Yeah. And so that starts to show up in other areas as well. And so again, it's not that you can never go to the town that is stressful, but you just don't want to live there because it doesn't serve you or the others in your life.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, that's for sure. Ryan, I have a couple more questions for you before I let you go.
Sure.
You've given us a lot of great tips. If people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, definitely. So ryanstanley.com. Pretty basic and easy, my name.
Yeah.
And if you go there, it's there's the social buttons and all that, but I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I am on, I'm on something else, I'm sure. I'm on Twitter. Yeah, so you can find me there. Yeah. You can check out teachmetosell.com. If you want to buy my book, you can get it on ryanstanley.com. So on the top of the website, there'll be one of the menu buttons it just says, be patient, be present, be joyful. If you click on that, it'll take you there. If you buy it from there, you'll get a signed copy from me and a complimentary coaching session. But you can also find it on Amazon or barnesandnobles.com, anywhere books are sold.
Right. Yeah.
That type of thing. But and then obviously, like I said, teachmetosell.com is also there as well.
Awesome. Cool. And then you mentioned a little bit about some of the habits that you do. I want to know if there's anything else that you do on a day-to-day basis to kind of keep you upbeat and in a positive mindset, or any other things that you haven't shared with us that perhaps you do that might be useful for our listeners to take on.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot actually. And so I don't say this in the space that, you should do what I do, as much as I'd say that, as we've discussed, it is intentional. It does take time. Right. It does take purpose. But if you're going to be living, from my experience, you might as well be living it on purpose, right? Life. Right. Something I said recently that really I'm enjoying repeating is that living on purpose doesn't happen by accident. And so I wake up every morning between 5:30 and 6. I meditate for an hour. So I'm starting my day in a place of presence, so that I'm not stressed and it's just a mind building exercise. Then I exercise for a half hour. So movement, keeping your body healthy physically and movement as well. I do my daily affirmations. So it's like my out loud North Star that I talked about earlier. And that's about 10 minutes or so. And then I stretch for about another 10 minutes. And then I journal for about another 10 or 15 minutes. And so by the time that's all done, it's like 8:30 and I'm ready to start my day. So setting up each day on purpose has been huge, I think. But some other tips, so any of those things, so you don't have to do all of them. This is something that I've really been focusing on lately, is really, especially during these interesting times, I think it's important for us to be on purpose as often as possible. I think if you spend a lot of time on social media, I would recognize anyone who you follow that doesn't make you feel good and stop following them. Whether it be from comparison, whether it be all these, who knows? There are people out there who follow people all the time and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling bad about myself by doing that. I don't know why, but it's a real thing. So be aware of that. And the opposite side of that is find people who you do like, who do inspire you, and make time to spend time there. If you're just binge watching shows on Netflix, you could spend time seeking something on YouTube that is motivational, that serves your purpose. I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle. I'm a big fan of, obviously, Tony Robbins does some great stuff, but they can lead you in so many different directions.
Right.
So spend some time, when we talk about the 5 people you surround yourself with most, they don't have to be people you know, right? So if you spend a little bit of time with an expert that you admire and that leads a life that you want to, and they're in a public format, or even just reading one of their books, like that is spending time with somebody intentionally. So do that. And this is could be controversial or not, but I'd say turn off the news. I haven't watched the news in like 5 years. I believe that I can get all the information that I genuinely need from friends or from social. I'm not saying you don't have to ever be on social media. I think there's ways to get information that will serve you. I think most news today is just filled with things. I think, after you watch it, how do you feel? Typically, even before the craziness that we're in right now, you didn't feel good after watching the news. And people have become addicted to watching that because they feel like that's where they're getting their information. But there's other ways to get the information. There's other places to get the information. So seek out sources that will serve your purpose and serve who you want to be. Right. Those are quick tips coming off the top.
No, that's awesome. And I myself decided to deal without any kind of TV or news or any of that stuff, or even music. I really don't do any of that, just because I believe a lot on the programs that go into your mind. Yeah. And how anything that we do, any kind of influences, whether it's through whether it's through social media. I mean, really at any given point, anything that you're kind of listening, watching, is stuff that's going into your mind. And so I decided to get rid of some of that stuff, because I believe and I 100% realize that it's hypnosis, and it is programs that you don't want to have in your life. It doesn't serve you, or at least it doesn't serve me for that purpose.
I would agree 100%.
Yeah. The last thing I have for you is, considering that maybe some of our listeners and viewers might be going through a challenging time, what would be one thing that you can advise them, besides everything you already told us, that you can advise them that they can possibly do to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, and it is going to be a repeat, but it's really it's a great question. And I think now more than ever, and I know I said earlier, but, and this is it, I know, again, I'm repeating it, but it's important. Decide who you want to be. Take action on it every single day, literally, in some capacity. And while you're doing that, intentionally be the light you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think literally if everybody did that, and they didn't let life's happening to me be an excuse for where they are or what they are as a career or as a person or whatever. Again, by no means am I belittling anybody's experience, stressful, traumatic at all. I've been through many myself. I am saying that you still have tomorrow. Like the sun rises every day. Who do you want to be today? Literally, ask yourself, who do I want to be? Well, Ryan, I don't know. It's a long life. Absolutely. Who do you want to be today? And what are you willing, not only able, but willing to do about it? Right. And then if you're doing that with the intention for the greatest good for all, and you intentionally doing that to be the light you want to see in the world, so that you see it and it surrounds you, other people will pick up on it, and then you will attract more people into your life. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Nope. I love that. That's awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much again for being here today and sharing your knowledge and making the time to speak to our
Cesar, I'm genuinely appreciative for your time as well. Really great to meet you, and I'm glad. Feels like I made a friend today. So I appreciate all that you're doing. The fact that you're making time to put this information out there to serve others. You are doing all the things that we talked about today. So with sincerity and gratitude, thank you for being you.
Definitely. Thank you so much for being here. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure you like, share, comment this podcast. You can find us in all platforms. And just do me a favor. Please come down here and comment on this podcast. Till next time, I'll see you guys at the next episode. Thank you again, Ryan. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.